Welcome back to One Winning Pod, where the Ravens were finally victorious at home, getting that monkey off their shoulder. It's a beautiful thing. They won 19-17. They did not cover. It was a winning field goal, though, at the end of the day, by the illustrious Justin Tucker. Never in doubt.
I'm telling you, man, reverse psychology. It works. Call for the Bengals to win, and they flipped it. They finally did. It was great. I should root for the Ravens to lose more often.
Basically, what you just volunteered there was that all of Ravens Twitter should have been yelling at you instead of John Harbaugh last week because you picked the Ravens to win. That's what we discovered this week, right?
Yeah, basically.
And also with us today to discuss this exciting win is Jason from HuddleItUpFilms. Jason, welcome to the show.
Nice to be with you, especially after victory. Alec has an Orioles shirt on. And I still I don't even like it because it's those Bengals colors. I'm still seeing. I'm not even seeing Orioles. I'm seeing Bengals. How you guys doing? It's great to be here.
Always great to be here after a win. After a loss too. We can all commiserate together, but it's always more fun after a win. And finally, just to top it off the bat, I think we got to look at this. It's crazy to think about it, but I think this is the most consequential win, the biggest win the Ravens have had since week 2 of 2021, if you really go back and look on it. I mean, we obviously know how the second half of last season went, and we couldn't beat the Bills to start the season. Miami would have been a big win if not for that collapse. And what were the quality wins last year after Kansas City? Minnesota, or Los Angeles Chargers? Maybe. They didn't make the playoffs, but obviously, we would have loved to have had at least one of those two games against the Dolphins or the Bills, but starting it off in the division 1-0 against a team that swept us last year, and badly at that. You got to feel good. You got to feel good about that. The trajectory is good. There's a lot of aspects of the Ravens game that have shown some progress from week to week. Some of those were key to the win this past Sunday night. So all in all, sure, there's some things we can nitpick, but it feels good to come out of that game, a game that could have gone either way, just like previous week in Buffalo. This time the Ravens were able to come out with the win. I
do agree this is probably the most momentous victory. I hadn't thought about it that way, but it definitely felt like it in the moment. It felt just like such a relief because, like you said, we lost so many games, first of all, at the end of the last year, and we just weren't able to squeak out those close ones. Every single close game in the recent history we've lost. This was the first one we won, and it was a beautiful thing. And that just goes back to last year, which of course is a different team, but even this year, right? So it felt very cathartic to get this victory.
Yeah, I think we can get right into it a little bit, but I think the first half felt, kind of similar to the couple games we've had recently. Bills game, I think maybe a good example of, the offense came out, they could move the ball pretty well during a couple of drives. I think they slowed down a little bit the second half. Still wasn't the confidence-building offense, if I had to call it that, in the second half. They did score some points. That's an improvement over weeks past. A couple of field goals. Unfortunately, no touchdowns. But, overall, a lot of things that felt similar, but also, a lot of improvement, too. The defense as well, also, I think, has had probably their best game almost all season. So, yeah, there's a lot of, good stuff that we can talk about and still, every week, stuff that can be improved on, too.
Yes, great win, divisional win. And it's not going to be pretty when you get into the division. If you watch football long enough, it's the most unpredictable stuff happens in those games. So just to come away with the win is just important. Aside from all the analysis and the nitpicking and the good and the bad that came out of the game, just what a great win. I like what Peter said. I do think it's probably the most important win since Kansas City game last year. LA Chargers game was probably the highest point of the season for me, just because we looked like we were clicking on all cylinders. And for a minute there, I was thinking, man, maybe we can overcome all these injuries and make a run at it. But yes, getting over the Kansas City hump last year, kind of akin to getting over the Cincinnati hump this year, just to get a lead on them, get some confidence, have to defend your home turf. And we were able to do that. Just a great win overall.
Well, let's jump into it and how the Ravens were able to come away with the win here. And I think a great spot to start out. Chris, you already mentioned the defense. And huge reason that the Ravens were not able to come away with wins last year was because they had no answer for Jamar Chase. Chase obviously had two of his biggest games of his rookie season against the Ravens, gave the team, the injured secondary, plenty of issues. And, back then we gave the Bengals their credit. They're like, they executed their assignments, certainly made it known in our analysis, hey, this was against a banged up Ravens secondary. If Marcus Peters was there, I'm pretty sure Deshaun Elliott was out for both those games as well, you had a fuller secondary. It would have been a different story. And while we can't speak specifically for last year, it's certainly the case this year. Marcus Peters was back. Marlon Humphrey is back to playing all pro football. And the Ravens, they limited Jamar Chase. Alec here got his second bold prediction of the week or the season last week. Alec called that the Ravens defense would hold Chase to 60 yards or less. They held him to 50. And that was the leading receiver for the Bengals outside of Hayden Hurst, got 3 more yards. That was where this win, as I see it. The Ravens had to contain Jamar Chase in this game, and they did it.
The beautiful thing about this victory was that it went exactly as we kind of discussed, right, Jason, of let's not give them anything over the top, rally to the ball and make tackles, and just let them make their own mistakes. Like, it won't be us. It won't be us. And honestly, it's a really good way to play. And we'll talk about it in the next episode when we talk about the Giants. I feel like that's been their key to success, is that on offense, they are going to live to die another day. And I felt like that was kind of defense. We will live to die another day. And hopefully your drive will stall out. We'll get a couple plays together. We'll give you 3, and 2, and that's not enough. Then you're going to punt. And we did that a lot. They got positive gains on every play, but it wasn't quite enough, or we rallied to the ball. And I think there were a couple instances where I wanted to see us man up a little bit better. I think around the third quarter or so, I saw the defense not covering the running back out of the backfield. Chris alluded to it. P. Ryan was just eating us up, these little catches. And I was thinking, other than maybe having a guy follow him the whole way, manning up on him, I thought that we were super solid in our defense and our coverages.
Yeah, overall, I definitely agree with that. I think the biggest key for me, is that they really started out really well in the first half. I think we held the Bengals 3 and outs, I think, on the first couple drives. I think that was definitely a good start. But yeah, overall, I agree with you guys of what you're saying. I think the secondary, I think their play, was absolutely key to this game. I think overall, there were a lot of good things. Obviously, holding the team to 17 points, that's a great thing. Yeah, it wasn't perfect. There were some things that could be better. Like you said, yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, they were letting some underneath stuff go. That's okay. Given who they were going up against with Chase, and I know Higgins was kind of out in the second half, but while the Bengals haven't been good this year at making the big play, we know that they can do it for sure. So I will take that trade-off almost any day of the week. Overall, I think it was pretty good. I think the only other thing that I wish that maybe we still kind of haven't figured out, but you know what? I think this might just be we just might have to accept that this is going to happen. Pass rush, I think for me, it's it did okay at the beginning of the game. Near the end, if I were the opposing quarterback, I just don't feel like I would feel threatened, It's just, we can apply some pressure. It's okay. It doesn't really scare me. I really wish it did, but I don't know if that's the story of this year, to be honest.
Well, I have some hope for the pass rush just because of the pieces coming back. My main issue with the defense at this point, before I get to the positive, is the run defense. And I think it comes down to the play we've gotten at the second level, our inside linebackers. It's just tough. We're not getting above average play consistently from them. We're seeing them get blocked. We're seeing them get dragged by tackles. We saw some errors in coverage, but last night was a lot better in that area. So that's a positive sign. But yes, the run defense, I feel like if we can make teams more one-dimensional, Joe Mixon was not having, and that Bengals offensive line we're one of the worst in the league at running the ball per carry. And they didn't have very much problems doing that once they were determined to do so after the Lamar interception. But going back to what Alex said, what we were discussing, I find myself in the minority of being a Mike Macdonald fan. And I think that part of this, the reason we were able to win last night was the switch from Wink to Mike Macdonald. I mean, we saw a very safe defense. We've seen turnovers come from this defense. We've seen more people dropped in coverage, tip balls at the line of scrimmage that could have been interceptions, that have been interceptions. And when you look at Burrow, when you look at Mahomes, Josh Allen even, you cannot blitz these guys to death and play too many games and send too many rushers where they will burn you and they will hit the big plays. Like Alec mentioned, we were dead set on, what Burrow averaged like 4 air yards per attempt. So it was check down city. Mm-hmm. Check down city against Joe Burrow, and we rallied and we were able to make the tackle. And that's a big difference in philosophy. And just to play that out into next week, it makes me really interested, not to switch topics too much, but the Giants are an opposite style offense. I could see us loading up to stop Saquon Barkley. So I'm really interested to see what Macdonald has in store next week, because bad run defense against Saquon Barkley is not going to cut it. So we'll get to see what kind of adjustments Macdonald has made. But look at the Jets game. We pretty much shut them out of the end zone until garbage time. The Miami game was good until all that infamous third and fourth quarter. The Patriots, as we've seen, no matter who's a quarterback, Belichick is going to find a way to scheme and get himself points. We held Buffalo to 23 points. And then last night. So overall, I think the defense has played really well. There's some things to clean up. I think the linebackers is more of a talent problem than a coach's scheme problem. And arrow up on defense, I think.
The biggest thing that I've loved about the defense through 5 games is you're seeing improvement every week in things. And I think that is expected when you're switching to a different defensive coordinator. They're learning some new schemes. You got some new pieces. They're trying to figure out who gels with who. And I think, there's been a lot more improvements in the pass defense than the run defense to start out with. I do agree with that. But we're seeing in-game adjustments with this defense. We're seeing a mix of stuff that I think is thinking outside the box a little more than maybe in years past. And, just small example of that. Down at the goal line in the third quarter, I want to say there was that pass interference call on Kyle Hamilton. Rookie mistake. He knew he made the mistake right as he did it, it looked like. And that got the ball on the 1-yard line. That was what Hamilton on Hurst. Next play, switched out the rookie, put Chuck Clark on Hurst. And now maybe Clark got away with a little bit of a hold there, but he got himself in good position, whereas, what could have been an easy touchdown slant to Hurst, that was stopped. And we've seen other instances of this throughout the season. Obviously, another big one, Devonte Parker on is it Jalen Armour Davis, I believe, in New England. That didn't work. Try Stevens there. We're seeing some in-game adjustments, and I think that's going to be huge going forward, because that's how football games are won. You can't just keep going out there, and when your first plan doesn't work perfectly, just keep trying it until it works. You got to adjust a little bit, and we're seeing that, and hopefully some more adjustments can be made with the running defense. I agree with you 100%, Jason. I'm very interested to see what our rush defense looks like against Saquon Barkley next week, because, again, we're getting ahead of ourselves, but if you shut down Saquon, you pretty much shut down the Giants' offense right now. But what gives me hope about this unit is, just to bring it all back, we're seeing improvement every week, and that's as much as you can ask for. It's a long season. Hopefully, as the weather gets colder and we get closer to the playoff push, we're going to see this unit mold into an extremely strong unit that opposing offenses aren't going to want to play against. And there's the pieces there to do it. We're just going to have to see how well they can put them together.
I truly think that the Ravens pass rush is getting respected, and because it's getting respected, we're not seeing the results. And the reason I say that is that Burrow is getting the ball out quick, averaging 2.26 seconds. No rush can get home in 2.26 seconds. It just doesn't happen. And if that's your average, there's sometimes you're throwing out the ball even faster.
Well, they're professionals. I mean? Can't they just run faster?
No. So it's like, I think the game plan that we've been seeing against the Ravens is we're not going to let your pass rush get there. And I think it might be because of what Jason was saying about level 2 and the lack of confidence, maybe that these players can finish the tackle, get off a block. They're trying to win on yak, which was the way to beat us last year and was the way that Miami beat us. But Miami has freaks, right? So, I think we've adjusted our scheme to account for that. So the big thing that I see is teams not wanting us to have a chance to get home with the 4. I think we could do it. I think there's times that they show potential. And I think some of those batted passes are byproducts of getting good leverage and push. So overall, I'm pretty pleased with that aspect, but you can't look at the box score for it. To go further with the adjustments that the Ravens defense is making, not just in-game, but game-to-game, we saw a shift to Pepe as a slot corner, getting 75% of the snaps over Stevens, who got basically 100% of the slot corner snaps. No other cornerback played snaps last game, but it was total switch. And Harbaugh addressed this as having a plethora of options and just wanting to see everyone contribute. I don't know what that really means or how this will go forward, but I thought that was an interesting development. I'd also note this was the first time we saw a dip in Queen's snaps. He was 81% snaps this game. So I thought that was interesting. There definitely seems to be a little less emphasis on the inside linebackers, but not so dramatic that it changes your scheme, just slight tweaks.
Yeah, I think I'm actually trying to look up the snap count for Malik Harrison in weeks past, but it looks like he was on 30% of defensive snaps this week. I like when he was in there in general. I noted like there were a few tackles that he made. Although they were kind of shoestring tackles, I felt fairly confident in like his ability to actually make some stops, which, we've talked ad nauseum like about our inconsistent linebacker play. So I don't want to get like too much detail there, but yeah, I mean, if Malik continues to kind of be a solid tackler, like I'd love to see him more on, first downs where we know it might be like an obvious run play or something. Might be kind of nice. But yeah, we'll have to see. I will say, not all to kind of be outdone here. Queen had a little bit of a redemption of, we got to talk about the interception. I think it was a great read, of getting back in the zone and just undercutting Chase. Make the play. Unfortunately, I wish I could say that it led to a touchdown, but the offense kind of stalled out. So it just led to the 58-yard Justin Tucker field goal. But nevertheless, I mean, it was a good play. We're finally waiting to see if he has some hands. The answer is he does have hands. At least he used them last night. So good for you, Queen.
Yeah, great to get a positive play from Patrick Queen, an impact play, not just a positive play. So yeah, we're going to need everything we can at that second level of the defense, because I'm confident in the secondary, and McDonald has shown that when the 4-man rush isn't getting home, he will try to manufacture some pass rush. We saw a sack from Bynes last night. He'll drop defensive linemen into coverage and that little short zone when he has to overload one side. So yeah, just interested to see how this defense goes. But I think overall, from what I've seen from fans, they were really down on Mike McDonald. And the only part that really bugs me about that is it's seen as nepotism from Harbaugh, and it's absolutely, it is not. Jim Harbaugh was the benefit of nepotism by letting us lend him McDonald for 1 year. But McDonald is following the same path that we've seen really almost every defensive coordinator from the Ravens. They promote from within. They promote from within all the way back. I mean, you think Mike Nolan and Chuck Pagano, they were positional coaches and then were promoted to defensive coordinator. So McDonald is following that same path. And I think that people look at the Michigan connection and don't understand that McDonald was here for 7 years before he was lent to Michigan for 1 year. So, the numbers don't look great. I think a lot of that was skewed towards one game. We have to get better on run defense, but overall, I'm hopeful. I'm definitely feeling better about the defense than I was after the Miami game.
All great points right there. Before we move off the linebackers, I think we also have to talk about Jason Pierre-Paul a bit. It's his second game as a Raven. A little quiet his first game, but certainly had a lot of success, particularly early in the game. Just the Ravens realized that they could get after Lael Collins, right tackle for Cincinnati, early. And Jason Pierre-Paul did some great work against him in the first half. Had 1 point, had 2 balls batted down at the line of scrimmage on back-to-back plays. Didn't end up meaning anything because the Bengals would get a first down on that third of that drive anyway. But some good signs from him. I'll be honest, when they signed him, I wasn't expecting terribly much. I know it's still just one game. When you get a guy on your team who's didn't sign before the start of the season, has played in the league since 2010, you're not really expecting them to do much more than, make a couple bit plays here and there, in my opinion. But at least in this matchup, we saw Jason Pierre-Paul make some impact plays. He did disappear a little bit down the stretch, but it was good to see some positive signs from him, and we'll see how much he can hold down the fort as they wait for Bowser and everyone else who are expecting or hoping to come back from the pass rush to get into the fold. So I thought that was some positives there from Jason Pierre-Paul, and I was wondering your guys' thoughts on him as well.
Yeah, I think JPP helps. I think he does. It's just one more piece, and there are going to be offensive tackles across the league that he's just better than, even in this part of his career. And, one of the reasons I'm still hopeful in the pass rush is that Justin Houston is a big part of this. He's still a very effective pass rusher at his age. Just, again, another guy that can outclass, outcrafty, find a weakness, has a variety of pass rush moves. Justin Houston is still very good. And then if you pair him with JPP, Owe, you rotate those guys in, they will have matchups that are in their favor, even though Owe is still kind of feeling his way into the league. Throw Tyus Bowser in there. He led the team 7 or 8 sacks last year. And maybe you have a Jabo come in at the end of the season. Then you're relying less on guys like Calais Campbell on the edge. We've had Malik on the edge and some of these other guys who aren't really pass rushing from that angle. Move Calais on the inside, let him beat some centers. We've seen Matabike show up. I think Travis Jones will get better as the season goes on. Broderick Washington, just a force against the run. So overall, I think that there's enough pieces there that if we get good games or a good stretch, or we find a way to mix and match these guys, we have enough pieces to exploit the opponent if they're weak at one particular tackle, or one particular tackle can't handle speed, or one particular tackle they have can't handle power, or so-and-so. We have an answer, a guy with a strength in that particular area. So even though we don't have one standout pass rusher, I believe that among the group, we can get pressure. Some games will be easier than others, like the Jets game. We were just too much for them. Cincinnati had some weaknesses, and we were able to exploit that. But, it'll be a concern of mine come playoff time when, these offensive lines are gelling and there's more talent overall. But as for in the season right now, I think that we're going to be able to exploit some weaknesses in opposing offensive lines.
It's definitely good to see JPP get more production out of the same amount of snaps, and that they still had confidence in him to have that many snaps. And yeah, I think the big piece of the puzzle is how much will Owe grow over the course of the season, and how effective these Achilles injured players are at their return. If we transition, I think, to the secondary, we have to acknowledge that Marcus Williams got hurt. He dislocated his wrist and will be out for, quote, significant amount of time. He will be placed on IR. I'm guessing it's going to be about 2 months, and he'll come in for the last 3 or 4 games of the season and ramp up, so to speak, and hopefully for a playoff push. Huge loss. Guy that was getting 100% of snaps and generating turnovers and playing just, at an extremely high level. The fascinating part of his departure, in my opinion, is that Geno Stone was his replacement. Geno Stone got all of the snaps that Marcus Williams would have gotten. And before that, he was on pace to have 1 or 2 snaps like he had previous games. He was not a part of the defensive game plan. And I just find it very interesting that Stone is the replacement for Williams, and they have the confidence in him to be the replacement for Williams, but he has very little, schemed appearances otherwise. Whereas Hamilton is all about these schemed appearances, and his snap count didn't grow from this. I just thought that was really interesting, and I'm curious how this will play out because there's a very long runway, at least 4 games, most likely more, that these two guys are going to get to showcase what they can do and try to earn more snaps.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of get it. But I mean, then again, like Geno Stone got extended amount of play time last year. Like I think he's a good player. But I do think, I don't know. Marcus Williams definitely an upgrade. For sure. I don't think there was any scenario that the Ravens wouldn't have gone out and get another I mean, obviously they picked up Williams and Hamilton, so they knew that they needed an upgrade. But yeah, I mean, like I look at him as kind of like almost like a Haruki Nakamura type, or I mean, even a Zibikowski type of like somebody who's like, does a lot of special teams work, could play certain role on the defense in some situations, but for either of those guys, I don't think either of those had significant playing time unless Ed Reed was hurt or whoever was playing strong at that point was hurt. I kind of feel that way about Geno. Yeah, like I'm confident that he'll be back there. He seems to play the deep safety role pretty well. But then again, like if Hamilton can get some of the mental mistakes out, like I'd much rather him be out there. But yeah, at this point, it's just he's really got to clean those up. They're really negative plays. I went into the game knowing that pretty much Hamilton probably is not going to see the field unless he's in the red zone. I feel like the last couple of weeks, that's really where the Ravens have kind of put him. Because after the Miami game, with just letting up that one pass, I think it was to Tyreek Hill, I was just really bad. You can't have that. So it'll be unfortunately with this game, he also had that play that we talked about earlier, where he caused the pass interference on the end zone. So another kind of mental mistake. So he's gonna need time, man. But I'm okay with the situation to just get him a few snaps though, because like he's gonna need that, right? That's the solution to be able to figure out all these mental mistakes, is to get more reps, and you can only do so much in practice. So
yeah, I'd be lying if I said right now I have any expectation or terribly concrete predictions of how the Ravens are going to replace Marcus Williams. We've seen, that's a tough position to find guys for in the NFL. Your center fielder, safety who can cover back half of the field and close in and force turnovers like Marcus Williams is able to do. I mean, how many guys did the Ravens cycle through to try and replace Ed Reed before they were able to briefly get Earl Thomas before, obviously, we know how that ended. So I think there's going to be some growing pains here, whether it's Geno, whether it's Hamilton, whether they maybe they throw Stevens back there, although I'm not sure if he would be their choice over those other two. They might have to try some different things. There's going to be growing pains there. The plus side of that is, looking up at the schedule that the Ravens have coming up, you've got some opponents, I think, I don't want to underestimate teams because it can set you up for some poor expectations, but, New York and Cleveland are next. Their deep passing games aren't among the league's best. After that, you do have Tampa Bay and New Orleans. They have got some things they can do there with Chris Olave there, but that's really just not too much there. Tampa's a wild card, and then you got Carolina, Jacksonville. The schedule here is a little soft. The injury could have come at a worse time, but yeah, we'll see what they do. They have some options, and the good news is that the Ravens were still able to contain Cincinnati even after Marcus Williams went out, so you at least have a blueprint there of some things that worked, and just start from there. We'll see what they come up with.
Really tough blow losing Marcus Williams. I mean, it was just so nice having a pure free safety back there, and we were getting the production out of him and everything. It was just beautiful. I will say that last night I was pleasantly surprised that Geno Stone was inserted into that game because of the game and the situation and what had happened previously. If you guys noticed, all up until that point, I think Alec mentioned it briefly, but it was Kyle Hamilton when they wanted another safety in the back end and wanted to switch things up. It was Kyle Hamilton. And in that Bills game, after another mental mistake from Kyle Hamilton, if you remember, they pulled him out, put Geno Stone in. I think Geno Stone actually was the one that gave up the next play. but it's been a handful, if not more, at least a handful from what I can tell in my not so expert eyes, of mental mistakes by Kyle Hamilton in those first 4 games. And when, stuff hit the fan last night in a close game and an important game, the Ravens and Harbaugh and Mike McDonald decided, you know what? Geno Stone is not a first round pick. He's not the future, but he's the best person for the job right now. We know we can count on him to run that back end, to be in the right spot. And I love that. So credit to Geno Stone. And as for how it plays out for the rest of the season, I mean, I think early indication is they want that to be Hamilton's spot, of course. At least while Marcus Williams is out, they coveted Hamilton for his true versatility, where he can play free safety or take over for Chuck Clark and play with Marcus Williams when they're both healthy. So like Peter was saying, against the Giants, against the Browns, maybe we put more of an emphasis on stopping that run game of those guys and just have one deep safety in the back and say, okay, Kyle, you're not really working in tandem with anybody necessarily in a 2 safety look. Just cover the back end, buddy. Do what you did in college, cover that whole back end. So I could see, even though last night Stone was the guy, I could see them trusting Hamilton again against some teams that really aren't threatening that back end, where we don't have to put 2 safeties back there. So tough situation for the Ravens. I think that this can be Kyle Hamilton's spot as the season goes along, but it feels really good to have somebody like Geno Stone that you can rotate back there and switch. He can play strong safety, free safety, safety combo. Anything you ask Geno Stone to do, he calms that back end down, like we saw last year when they made the switch from Stevens to Stone in that Packers game, I believe, where everything just looks more calm. So big credit to Geno Stone, and still high hopes for Kyle Hamilton. It's just going to take him a while. I think he's trying to do too much. We did a film study on the show where he's just trying to cover for breakdowns elsewhere in the defense instead of sticking with his assignment. So Kyle just has to settle in. I still believe in him. It's only 4 or 5 games into his career.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything that's been said, and I'm very glad to have Geno Stone on the team, and the confidence and just I don't even know what I would call it. Just I guess confidence and trust that we have in his abilities to produce at a known quantity level. I just think it's very cool to peel back the curtain. Obviously, I don't wish for injuries, but it's cool that we're basically seeing that, we're willing to use Kyle Hamilton in situational football. We're willing to see his growth by using this mechanism. But if push comes to shove and we need a starter right now, they actually seem to trust Geno Stone more. And I think it's just funny that I think they're just admitting to themselves they would probably use Geno Stone in those Hamilton snaps if it wasn't for the fact that they know Hamilton has the higher ceiling. They're just exposing themselves of what they truly think of the 2 players at the moment. It's just kind of interesting.
I mean, but that's also what happens when you go and draft a guy at that position when you already have 2 very good safeties, 3 arguably if you count Geno. So, yeah.
Hey, the perfect scenario is that Hamilton progresses and they're able to, cycle them both out, and you're getting great play from both of them, and that you're able to hold over till Marcus Williams comes. Is that's what's going to happen? We'll see. But, maybe Hamilton will see that this is an opportunity, like Jason's saying, just kind of find ways to slow the game down and, just trust himself more. And we'll get some great play on the back end while we're waiting for the big free agent signing to come back. So
I definitely think that now that they'll have a week of game planning with this as a known situation, how we'll see the next game or 2 games or whatever, and how they'll probably adjust the scheme based on teams. Because I do think there's merit to saying, all right, we don't really see a big downfield option for them. That's not really part of their game. We can go ahead and use Hamilton more, or vice versa. So I just think this is all really interesting. And I think the ceiling of our defense has definitely come down by this loss, because you can't just replace a guy like that, overnight. But I do think that we can have very consistent play, and it was proven in the second half of the game that is still at a very high level, and this is not a crisis.
Agreed. Bold prediction on the show. Can I give one? Kyle Hamilton plays the most snaps of his NFL career here coming up against the Giants after what people will look at as a benching or a whatever. Geno Stone passed him on the depth chart. He's going to follow that up by playing his highest snap count by far. I don't have the snap counts in front of me, but let's say Kyle Hamilton plays 35 to 40 snaps. And just to give you an idea, in a normal game, you'll have like 55 to 60 snaps. So I'm going to give Kyle about 40 snaps this game, 35 to 40.
If he was at 40, he'd be tied with Calais Campbell, Josh Bynes, Jason Pierre-Paul. So, yeah, I mean, right now, for context, he did 14 snaps, so he was tied at the bottom with Brent Urban.
So pretty bold. Yeah, I'm gonna bump him up to 35 to 40 this week and say they rely on him more than Stone with, as Alex said, a week of game planning and a different style offense.
I like it. Hey, he's going to figure it out eventually. I can't forget. A lot of people wanted to send Adley back down the minors after 2 weeks, and we know, just got to be patient with these players, trust their draft pedigree, and obviously for Adley, that worked out. And there's plenty of other players who have struggled early, and they've been able to translate their game once they've adjusted to the NFL. So, yeah, if we can get it next week, that'll be great.
I just want to mention, everybody's been talking about it, that play by Marcus Peters. Was it that second down play where the Bengals tried the Philly special?
Oh, yeah, we do need to talk about that.
that was a great individual effort of just recognizing that. Like, I knew as soon as, I saw the receivers running in the backfield in opposite directions. I'm like, Philly special, 100%. And then I can't remember who started covering Burrow, but Peters knew that somebody was on Burrow.
Oh, man. The Ravens snuffed that out. Boyd should have just thrown that ball through the back of the end zone once Burrow got covered, because the Ravens saw that play coming all the way.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a great play recognition, and you can't run that shit on us, man. That tweet got so many likes yesterday. Yeah.
Apparently, the blocking that occurs on that particular play is pretty recognizable, and that's the way that you can diagnose it. And it was awesome to see that Peters just rallied to the ball, and we gotta just commend the guy. He played 100% of snaps after people were writing him off as most likely not going to play due to the Worley elevation. Harbaugh mentioned in his presser that they have a Purple Heart award that they give for players that battle through injury, and he has been nominated through that performance, and I would not be surprised at all if he wins it, given the fact that how many opportunities are there for players to have that opportunity, so to speak, and how many of those players can be as dominant as Marcus Peters was. I honestly think he was the number one performer on the team despite the injury, and was the heart and soul of the defense.
Just what an instinctual play by him. There is no chance. Like I want to agree with Peter. I have to watch it again, or maybe get a good angle, but I don't know if he could have threw it out of the end zone. It was just maybe, yeah, he could have probably aimed for the goalpost or something, but
it would have been close. Oh, yeah, definitely.
yeah, that's something that I've seen quarterbacks not be able to do, and you're going to ask a wide receiver to do it. That's just so tough. But all that to say, what an instinctual play by Marcus Peters, and it's just such a pleasure. One of the reasons I am big on extending Marcus is that chances are his speed isn't all the way back. He's still toughing it out. I mean, he had an injury midweek, and yet we see how fast he plays. He's so instinctual that even when he loses a step, or if he's going in with a quad injury, he's still playing super fast. So sign this man up, man. Extend him, clear up the cap space, get him locked in with Marlon Humphrey for the next 3 or 4 years or whatever it is, and have yourself one of the best 1-2 punch at outside corner in the NFL.
If we're talking about tweets that got high engagement, we got to talk about the fact that I said, extend Peters, trade for DJ Moore, and let's have a party. So I'm with you, Brother Jay. I would love if we could clear up some cap space to make a midseason move to try to elevate our team. And I think that's a good segue into the offense. Lacking Rashad Bateman, I don't necessarily think that was the reason our offense struggled to score touchdowns. But I do think having an extra receiving threat, despite people stepping up in the absence, would obviously be a good thing for the team. And I would hope create consistency drive to drive to be able to convert more of these into touchdowns.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like I said earlier, like I feel like the first half of the last couple of games, the Ravens haven't had too much trouble moving the ball. Even in like the first half, I think they relied a lot more on the running backs. Even Mark Andrews didn't really have a whole lot of catches until the second half of the game. So they were able to move it fairly well just between guys like Dobbins, Drake. Duvernay also continues to be heavily involved. I think he ended up with 5 catches and 3 carries, I think, as well. So he was touching the ball a lot. I feel like there's a lot of room for improvement there, obviously. I think, Dobbins is continuing to kind of get back. We're seeing more just like flashes of the player that he was in 2020. Just he had that incredible, I think he was supposed to be stopped for like a 1-yard gain on this run play, but he was able to just bounce off the tackle and then keep going, and ended up being like an 8 or 9 yard run. That was a great individual play from him. So like, as he continues to get healthy, I'm imagining that he's going to take on a bigger role in the offense, be a little bit more explosive, kind of be more of a threat of a big play. I feel like that was a little bit off in general, just kind of the threat of the big play. So maybe that was like the biggest loss of Bateman, is that he's kind of been that guy the first couple of weeks. But yeah, I mean, overall, like, I love to see the consistent, like we're starting to see some more consistency on continuing drives. That's a big thing. First couple of weeks, I know we had a lot of trouble with that. So that's good. We just need to be able to put that together with, QB accuracy and adding some big plays here and there. They weren't there last night.
I think it's really hard to pinpoint exactly what the issue has been in the second half of the games the past 2 weeks, partly because I think it's just a lot of things maybe not being 100% in sync. And that's me just kind of working through what might be the issue. I do hear what you guys are saying about the wide receivers, but I think we also have to look at, in the beginning of the third quarter, the Ravens had 2 opportunities for basically 50-yard touchdowns. Devin Duvernay had a huge lead on the defenders, a couple strides ahead of the safety that was on him, and Lamar just overthrew him on that one. And then on the 4th down play, unfortunately, another inaccurate pass from Lamar. He had Wallace with maybe even a bigger lead down the sideline in what would have been a walk-in touchdown, and just some accuracy issues there for Lamar. Another issue I think might be, we'll get to Ronnie Stanley, I'm sure, but and I also don't want us to talk too much negative to start out with, because there was a lot of positive in the game too. But last night with the offensive line, run blocking I thought was particularly good. We're talking in the defense about stuff that has improved from week to week. Last night, run blocking was really good. And if you look at the ball carriers, everyone who had more than one carry averaged at least 4.8 yards per carry. That's Jackson, Dobbins. Duvernay was used as Debo Light a little bit there. And Kenyon Drake, excellent night rushing the ball for the Ravens. But pass protection, I think, is a little shoddier. It looked better to me when Ronnie was in there. I don't have any numbers where I can compare exactly whether or not that was the case, if Lamar had more time in the pocket when Stanley was in there versus McCary, or it was pretty much even in both cases. But I think that in the second half, the offensive line protection needs to hold up a little stronger for Lamar to be back there and to be able to have time and not feel like he has to hurry throws or give up on plays early while he's waiting for them to develop. But yeah, I think it's hard to pinpoint exactly what the one solution is to it, because I think it's just a lot of different things that just need to get in sync to address that issue.
I would love to see the Ravens be able to add another wide receiver if that person is in fact a part of the future. I would like to see us just address the outside receiver, because, we're seeing it with Bateman. I think a lot of the stuff last night with Lamar holding the ball was, we'll have to check and watch the tape, but we don't have a lot of pure separators out there. Without Bateman, we really don't have expert route runners and things of that nature. So we saw Lamar spread the ball out quite a bit last night. and holding the ball. Maybe that had to do with just nobody being open, against the team that, when you look at the Bengals, they have some veteran pieces, man, pretty decent secondary and a pretty, a divisional opponent that's familiar. So if we can get a guy like DJ Moore or something like that, that would be great. Or even a Robbie Anderson, I could see them playing a big role in this team. Pass offense, yeah, I would like to add another piece. I've kind of been wanting that. I think the offense could be borderline unstoppable, like top, 2 or 3 offense in the NFL if you add something, because we're seeing with Bateman, okay, Bateman's out, then they focus on Andrews, then it's just kind of a snowball effect. So I would like for depth and just effectiveness to do it. And you know what, Peter, I'll split with you a little bit. I think, that also had to do with the offensive line play last night. I think was just nobody was open. I think Lamar is one of the least sacked, least hit quarterbacks in the league. And I wouldn't have expected that going into the year. I had real questions about the offensive line and without Ronnie Stanley. So, pass protection was good. And it was good to see the run blocking and the run game get going last night, because that's going to be very, very crucial as the weather gets bad down the stretch.
Jason, I got a question for you, because I already know Alex's answer here, or I probably know what he's going to say. So, I mean, just talking on the conversation about adding another piece to the passing attack, I was watching Prochet because he had a more snaps this game, I think, that he has the last couple of weeks. My initial take, and I want to hear yours after this, is basically like, I don't know, I felt like he had trouble getting open in general, but I acknowledge that I think he was not the first or second read on a lot of plays, so I think that might have to do some of why maybe Lamar was not looking his way. But at least from some of the routes I saw, it didn't look like there were a lot of plays that he could have gotten the ball.
Yeah, separation isn't the strength of Prochet's, but it's like, just about everything else is. He doesn't have the speed. He has quickness. The Ravens, of course, see a lot of zone defenses. So when you're talking about wide receiver intelligence and being able to find the sweet spots, being able to shift your body, things like that. Like I still believe Prochet can be a good slot receiver in this league. But as your number 2 wide receiver option, that's he's limited. He's just good. I think he's good at what you ask him to do. So yeah, I mean, I was high on him compared to Miles Boykin and what we were running out there last year.
Yeah.
I wanted to see him play more. I was upset that he wasn't in the lineup really for the first 2 years. But, you get to a point, if you can add another piece, it's not a knock on Prochet or Wallace. It's just it adds another element to an offense that's already difficult to game plan for, where you could have a guy like DJ Moore or Robbie Anderson burn you for eight catches and have them be big catches, unlike Prochet, when he gets 8 catches, they're 12 yards a catch, 15 on a great day. But mostly right. Prochet's I'm going to catch 5 passes for 60 yards, and that's the kind of day you get from Prochet.
Before we move on from this discussion on adding new wide receivers, and I agree 100%, get DJ Moore here. That would be incredible. Robbie Anderson, I could see that working well as well. Just thinking out loud, what in the world do we think that the Ravens could reasonably give up to acquire DJ Moore from a Panthers team that, I mean, legitimately is more than likely in rebuild mode? So I don't know how high their asking price would be if he's on the trade block. But we've seen DaCosta was able to get Marcus Peters from the Rams while he's still in his prime. So they've done similar deals before, but I mean, what do we think? I mean, I'm just thinking out loud. I don't know. I just don't know if you guys have thought about that at all, or maybe we're all just pipe dreaming here.
No, I'm looking at his contract now. So his cap number is only $6 million this year. It balloons up to $25 million next year, $20 million, $20 million. He signed through 2025. So you're getting a wide receiver who's making an annual value of, what is it? He had a $19 million signing bonus. He's signed. Okay, so they've already invested in him. You're not getting him for the price that you want. So it's always going to be hard to tell. Like if this was a 1-year rental or something like that, you could get a better feel for it. But these guys always go for less than what you expect. I don't think the Panthers necessarily want to move DJ Moore. I think they view him as, look, we're a quarterback away from Brady retiring and, having Jameis Winston and the Falcons in our way. Like, I feel like they know with their young defense, they can turn it around quickly. But, so I think that you would have to give up something to get him. Maybe it's a pipe dream, but they have a few players on that team. Robbie Anderson is not the case. That's not the case for him. You could have him probably for a mid-rounder. And then a guy that I was bargaining for on Twitter, Frankie Louvu. Most of the listeners probably don't know who that is, but he is a hard-nosed linebacker, a great player in coverage and against the run. Of course, linebackers are undervalued. Maybe you could get him away. He was an unrestricted free agent they got from the Jets. So the Panthers definitely have pieces. I don't think we're going to invest in a Christian McCaffrey. I think Brian Burns is probably a pipe dream. DJ Moore might be a pipe dream. But, to get back to the original question, you might have to give up a first-round pick for DJ Moore. Would you do that to have DJ Moore under contract for the next 4 years at a paid price? Like, if you're looking to sign a wide receiver next year and you don't want to go back in the draft, then you could say, all right, we expect to win the Super Bowl. So instead of picking 32nd, we'll use that pick on DJ Moore and pay him what the Panthers paid him. So a lot of unknowns there, Peter. It's like, and guys, it's just really hard to tell with the trade market and what the Panthers are thinking and what the Ravens are thinking. But man, would it be nice to have a wide receiver who's more accomplished and still has the upside that like Bateman has.
Yeah, I think it would take at least a second is my guess, which feels rich, but I wouldn't hate it because I think DJ Moore is just the pinnacle example of a player that's been depressed by his surroundings. Like, I think he's a really good player, and he just doesn't get to show it too frequently just because of the way the offense around him is.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, man. Yeah, from like a depth perspective and like adding another interesting piece, like I do think it could open a lot of things up. I don't know. I just don't know if I see the Ravens wanting to shell out all that money for a receiver. I don't know. Like, we famously don't spend a lot of money at the receiver position. So like, I feel like it would be a departure of kind of like what we've seen to do that. It would be really aggressive. I mean, they would really have to feel confident that that's going to turn things around like really quick, and then as well as like all the other pieces kind of fitting into place of like Dobbins and Stanley and everybody being more healthy, and like boom, you have like the 2015 Carolina Panthers offense, something like that. Like you have like a really, really successful offense. I don't know if I would do that. Going back to the game, I feel like I feel like there were some good plays. I think we were kind of talking about it. Guys were being schemed open. Lamar definitely was having a little bit of an off night. I know there was a lot of throws that he wanted back. Those 2 deep passes were one. But I feel like for me, like this game is probably an example of why, like, I don't necessarily think it's a problem with roster construction or coaching necessarily. Like, I think like the plays were there to be made. I just think that, some of them weren't, made, honestly. And like the good news is all that stuff is fixable, and we've seen Lamar make these plays before. It's not like he can't do it, but it is something that just got to build more consistency. You got to be able to hit more of these plays, because really, like, you hit those too, and the game looks totally different. And I think Lamar said that himself. Of like, if you take back the interception, you hit one of those 2 passes that we mentioned, and now it's like a 24-3 game or something, right? It's really that's the only difference between the game that we saw and what could have been a blowout, which is pretty crazy when you think about it.
I do think we have to give Lamar credit though for the plays that he was able to make in this game, and just putting aside the misplays that he did have early in the second half, and at the end of the game when we needed him, and he hit that connection with Mark Andrews is incredible. It's incredible to see. We talked about Mark Andrews last year. There was a spike in his numbers, and it looked like he had elevated his game to the next level to be an actual top-tier receiving threat in this league. But we also talked about, was part of it game script? Obviously the Ravens were down a lot, and with all the injuries, they had to pass a ton. So that inflated his numbers a bit, but it also looked like, skill-wise, he had upped his game to a point where he had made it a degree harder for defenses to cover him. And that's really been the case still this year. I mean, okay, the Bills game was a little quiet. Some of that was wiped away from penalties. Some of it, a little bit of miscommunication between him and Lamar. But made a lot of clutch catches throughout the game. And it really jump-started that drive that ended up in the field goal. Had 2 catches to start moving the ball, and then Lamar just put his head down and ran for the rest pretty much. That's something we really can't take for granted with Lamar. Just, it doesn't matter what type of game he's having. He's shown time and time again that he can still make plays with his legs. He can still put aside the bad stuff that happened earlier and still will the team to victory. So he did a good game after some of those setbacks earlier.
Strange, Alec. I was thinking about this. It's something I want to talk about on Wednesday, but Lamar, in a strange way, showed his value even though he had a bad game. Like, all right, Lamar missed 2 throws that I think he normally makes, but no matter how you game plan, there's something that Lamar is going to eventually be able to do to exploit you. So, all right, whether it's the quick passing game, we've seen that versus Indianapolis the last couple of times we faced them, whether it's you're soft over the top and he can beat you with a deep ball, or, nothing's working. Lamar's having an off day. His jump shot just is a little off. He threw a couple of bricks up there. Well, when the game counts most, what am I going to do? I'm going to find my guy, Andrews. And by the way, you still have to defend my legs, and I'm determined here on this last drive to get every yard I can, however I can. So it was strange. It's like it wasn't a 400-yard, 5-touchdown game. It was a bad game. It was a pitcher that didn't have his good stuff. And then you look up at the end, and he's still getting the crucial outs at the end of the game to win you that game. So, hats off to Lamar. I thought it was an average game at best, but it was good enough to win that game, and he came through most when it counted. So Lamar Jackson, man, there's only one and only.
Yeah, for sure. I remember telling Alec at the end of the game, it was like one. I feel like in the second half we were just we were like so close to having the same script of just like the second half, like not scoring. And I remember telling Alec, I just need I need a play for Lamar to be Superman. Like whatever it is, if it's juking out or doing a spin move for all the Bengals defenders, like whatever it is, like pick up the first down with your legs. Like we just need it. We just needed that little spark, and it came right at the end with all those rushing plays, be able to pick up those first downs and drain the end of the clock. That was really, what I was looking for the whole game. And Peter, to your point with Mark Andrews, I think I know we talked about this, Al. You can say this, but we're basically literally just run the ball until you want to stop. And if you want to throw it, the only person you can look to has to be Mark Andrews. Don't look at anybody else. As much as Duvernay's having a good game and has been having a couple good games, he's not Mark Andrews. You throw it to Mark, he's going to get it no matter what. He's going to take on 5 tacklers while you do it. Fortunately, we didn't have to use them at the end of the game, but Lamar did his Superman things. But yeah, great point, Jason. Of just no matter even how poorly he seems to play, sometimes is you got to have confidence in him, and he shows why he deserves all that.
The way he orchestrated us getting into field goal range was just masterful. Never a doubt. I think from the first time he ran the ball, essentially, you just knew, okay, this man's going to convert first downs either with some help or by himself. It will happen. They will get to field goal range. And yeah, at that point, I was don't put the ball in the air. Ball security, get first downs. You have timeouts. You have time. Just go do the thing. And yeah, that big spark play that got most of the yards of the drive, that was our Superman play. So very glad to see that. If we want to talk about the running backs, the other people he leaned on during that final drive, it was interesting to me that Drake actually outsnapped Dobbins and was the running back of choice in that last drive. And I think we would be disingenuous to not discuss the fact that Dobbins was liking tweets about his utilization. So there's definitely a little bit of frustration, which has been apparent all during this ramp-up period for him of his utilization. But Harbaugh's playing both sides of it. The snap count is one thing, but the way he talks about Dobbins and pressers is definitely trying, I guess, to alleviate that. He talks about how you can't look at the snaps to figure out, what we think of people, and you can't discredit Dobbins. Like, he had some of the best runs he's had all game, which I think all those things are definitely true. But at the end of the day, man, when the game was on the line and you needed points, you didn't go to Dobbins, and I questioned that, honestly.
Yeah, we're seeing the Ravens are definitely taking it on the cautious side with these guys coming back from injury, the more serious injuries. Not really with the defensive guys, but Dobbins has been on a pitch count. Obviously, they held him out until the New England game. Stanley, who we'll get to, was on a rotation with McCary. And, we'll just have to see at the end of the season what that looks like. It definitely feels like they're playing more of a long-term game than looking at it as, let's just get these guys back onto the field because they're able to play football right now. That looks like, to me, without being in the coach's room, what they're doing is saying, we're willing to roll the dice here with backup players who we trust can do the job, although they don't have the same ceiling, as you guys said earlier, as the stars coming back from injury. And we're willing to take the risk with that cushion there. Ravens are still able to win the game. If they lost the game and fell to 2-3, that might be something we're discussing more. Maybe we should discuss it more if they're being too conservative here. But I don't think we're really going to know what the right answer is until the regular season is done and we see what the health of this team is, hopefully, going into the playoffs. But, I was saying it before the season started. I thought that we were going to have some growing pains with this team because of all the players coming back from injury. I thought that there was going to have to be some patience with certain players. We're seeing that right now, and the Ravens are playing the long game, and hopefully that works out in the end. But, I could certainly see some players just being frustrated, which Dobbins might be, just want to get on the field and help the team win. So it's an interesting balance they're trying to tightrope here.
It is, and I was really surprised that Dobbins wasn't on the field. Of course, wanted Dobbins on the field, and I'm sure Harbaugh wanted Dobbins on the field, but he was just sticking to his gut. And usually when players start liking tweets or doing some stuff on Twitter, it just makes me nervous. It makes me feel upset, like just anxious, and man, he's having problems with the team. This one's actually the opposite for me. I love it. I like seeing it because I think unlike when Hollywood was doing that kind of thing with the soldiers tweet and all the other stuff, there wasn't well, it's a good thing it ain't Browns week, but I'm going to use the term anyway. There wasn't a happy ending in sight. With the J.K. Dobbins situation, there's a happy ending in sight, Alec and Peter and Chris, and that is we're going to feed J.K. Dobbins the ball as much as we possibly can, because it seems like the person who downplays the severity of that injury, the only person, is J.K. himself. Like, J.K. was ready to go week one. J.K. was ready to come off PUP. J.K. doesn't see, doesn't care about the severity of the injury. He wants the darn ball. And guess what? We're going to be able to give him all the carries that he wants by the end of this season. So I don't see this as a scheme fit or a unhappiness. It's kind of like they're protecting J.K. from himself. They don't want to make this mistake. They value him that much. So in the end, I think it all gets worked out. Even though, when the game was on the line last night and we were handing the ball to Kenyon Drake, I was like, oh my goodness, is JK re-injured? What happened? So, I was glad to see it all the way around. JK wants the ball. He wasn't hurt, re-injured. It's going to work out well for the Ravens. So non-factor to me. I'm glad to see the running game get cranking. And, maybe we talk about the O-line next or whatever, but the run blocking seems to be improved to me as well. With Kenyon Drake getting the yards and JK breaking tackles, this is what we're going to need going down the stretch for sure.
Sure, why not? Let's talk about the offensive line. And of course, Ronnie Stanley was introduced. He got the second biggest cheer behind Lamar. I mean, maybe you could say Mark Andrews got a pretty good cheer, but I definitely think there was something special about Ronnie's. And then I would say right up there with him was JK. He was the first one out of the tunnel, and he was extremely well received. But yeah, the Stanley thing, man. Second drive, we see McCary come in. Then there was some sleuthing of, all right, well, it seems like Stanley's just standing on the sidelines. He has his helmet on. Like, life looks okay. It's just this must be the plan. And then I don't know if it was in the broadcast or not, but there was tweets online being like, yes, a rotation was the plan.
Yes.
Was it on
yes,
the
Alec.
broadcast?
Yes, they actually interviewed Harbaugh in between quarters. I don't know if you've seen this on primetime games.
Oh, they do that now? Jeez.
Yeah, they started doing that. So they asked him about Ronnie, and he confirmed live that, yeah, it's a rotation, going as planned, everything's cool. So, that was happening. But I'll just, sorry to interrupt, but I just might as well say my final say on this is that I was a little concerned when he didn't come back, but it looked like a fixed pitch count. I guess they didn't want to have that thing cool down and tighten up and then try to go back out there. But yeah, it was like everybody was wondering if he was okay, and Harbaugh they were able to interview him and get that out of him on the sideline. So yeah.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know they did that. But yeah, he looked good in my opinion. I thought he looked really nice in his in his opportunities out there. I thought he pulled well. I thought he moved well in space. I just thought he looked good. I had honestly no real complaints. Obviously, I think he had one bad rep where he let up a sack, but he didn't look like he looked. He definitely looked better than he looked against the Raiders, and that's all good.
I don't think he gave up a sack, but I think I know a play you're talking about. That was the play Trey Hendrickson got a jump?
He kind of moved across the formation.
Yeah.
I think it was at least a hurry.
It was a hurry, yeah. But I don't think he gave up a sack. Yeah, and honestly, not that I've dissected the film to the degree that I would want to before I make a statement like this. I think that was the only play he had on the night that was a negative that was glaring. I'll at least put it that way. If you guys saw anything else, please feel free to chime in. But yeah, that to me was extremely. Why am I blanking on what word I want?
Comforting.
Comforting. There you go. Very easy word. Good gosh, I'm tired. Anyways, yeah, he looked solid. The offensive line looked really good when he was in there. He looked way better than he looked in that Raiders game last year. Well, we can definitely say that. So I think that we can be hopeful about Ronnie Stanley going forward. We talked in the offseason, there's a serious injury that he suffered, and then he was getting a second surgery. So we had legitimate questions. We were talking about what was it back in May? Is this guy ever going to be able to play football again? Even play and if he can he play at a high level? And the early returns here on this game, that wasn't a pushover defensive line he was going against, and he held up well in pass protection and run blocking. So hopefully the Ravens are able to manage his injury well, and he's able to continue to increase his workload per game and gets back to playing all the snaps and is good to go for the rest of the season, because it was definitely great to see him out there, and I think the whole offensive line and offensive unit benefited from him being on the field.
For sure. I don't know if I have anything more to add, Mr. Stanley. We're glad you're finally back, dude. There's a guy in our section who was literally to tears when Stanley came out. It was pretty crazy to see. I think he was in tears a lot in the game, and I'm not entirely sure why, but he seemed very happy that Stanley was back. Man, so
we care about our team. We love our guys. Some of us show it more than others.
That's right.
Man, I would have loved to seen him after we won. After that Tucker field goal, man. He's probably a mess.
Oh, yeah, man.
I was welling up a little bit. I'll be completely honest. It was so cathartic. I was feeling the cardiac kids once again. I was just like, "Are you kidding me? Are we doing this all over again? I can't do this."
And the man got to see Ray Lewis too. I mean, what a night for that guy.
Yeah,
we should have made bets, man. Of what was the over under for Ray to be there? It would have been I mean, for me, it was 99.9999%. I knew, Nelly, Ray, come on. It had to happen. They waited way too long to finally pull Ray out. I thought they were going to do him with the regular introductions, do the team and then do Ray.
Oh, yeah, it was cool to have that moment. And the fans were so into it. This game, finally, there weren't so many opposing fans in the stands. Like, it really felt like true Ravens domination, and that was awesome. And just being prime time, they brought out all the stops, so many fireworks and lights and everything. It was really a great atmosphere, and I think they got people, really going. So, yeah, definitely benefited from a home field advantage last night. To wrap up the offensive line play, I was a little surprised by Cologne coming in for Linderbaum at that moment, but because Linderbaum was only out for 2 plays, it wasn't really as surprising. I guess they had a better context of the injury than I did. I thought he was going to be out for the game, and that was reassuring to see that he came back, and the rest of the line looked good. The only, I guess, other thing I would mention was Cleveland was inactive, so they did choose to have excess of tackle depth, and I think it makes a lot of sense given the fact that Stanley was on a pitch count, that if somebody got hurt, they would have another person to rotate. So good to see that it all held up and everyone came out uninjured on the offensive side.
So, Alec, I have to follow up with you, sir. I thought Cologne was coming in the game because McCary was being used at left tackle. What do you think? If Linderbaum was out the whole rest of the game, thankfully he's okay. What were you expecting to happen?
Oh, I was hoping that McCary would go inside and that Stanley would just finish out the game.
Okay.
That was my hope. Yeah. If it was going to be a long-term thing, I think that would be the plan. But because it was 2 snaps, it was not an issue. So we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. But I think it's just good to have Stanley on the up and up because it feels inevitable that McCary is going to have to step in somewhere else on the line just because of like how the league goes and how injuries go. And it'll be good to like get him out of the tackle rotation. Like you have Lele there, like he can sub in and play serviceably. So I think he'll be, he'll always be the next man up, but I think we might need him on the interior eventually later this year. And just best $6 million signing ever. He's done a lot of these middle contract guys. No one is as valuable as McCary, in my opinion, of these middle contract guys. Maybe Chuck Clark, but McCary is just awesome.
To be fair, McCary does have better tackle tape than James Hurst, although they play very similar roles. Anybody else we want to talk about the offense, or we got to go to a JT? Got to give him a shout out this week. I know we usually don't do special teams. I feel like we just kind of glance over them.
We do. There's just not much to emphasize with it, but I think we can talk a little bit about special teams because that's another big reason the Ravens won this game. The Bengals, they had a couple poor punts that gave the Ravens some great field position, and then just a total miscue on their end with the opening kickoff gave the Ravens a huge leg up to start the second half in the field position game. And then Justin Tucker just hitting those field goals like they were nothing. 58-yarder, no question. The game-winner, 40-yarder right down the middle. What more can you say? There's not too much to analyze with it, but you got to give it credit. Special teams was huge for the Ravens, both in their great execution of it and taking advantage of the Bengals' miscues there. Agreed.
Bengals, a couple of miscues. Ravens, 58-yarder. Tucker, what a job. I guess an interesting question to push to you guys was, I was at the last 45 seconds or so when Harbaugh decided to just run the clock down and kick. What was the final field goal? 43 yarders?
43.
Something like that. I was a little surprised that he didn't try to get closer. Like, I know it's Justin Tucker and everything, but it seemed like plenty of time. And then Harbaugh spoke today and was saying, well, look, you get a penalty. We were confident in our ball security because in that situation, the guys know to protect the ball at all costs, but we didn't want to risk a penalty and to push it back. I was a little surprised. Like I would have liked to seen them run the ball up the middle. The guys on the broadcast also mentioned something you guys missed, that Tucker struggled in warm-ups from one particular hash mark. And I think they said he missed like 4 or 5 kicks from one hash mark before the game. So maybe it was the thing where they wanted him to get either straight down the middle or another hash mark. But overall, I was surprised that they didn't run to whatever hash mark they felt comfortable with and try to get an extra 5 yards for our guy. But it worked out. So just wanted to get your opinions on that.
frankly, like my clock management skills, I think, are all over the place. To be perfectly honest with you, at about 2:30, I guess the Bengals still had the ball at that point. I was questioning why Harbaugh wasn't using his timeouts, because I guess what I imagined, me still being stuck in like the last 2 home games, that the Ravens offense was like at best going to get a field goal, but I wasn't super confident. I wasn't super confident in the Ravens' ability to basically use up all the time left. That was like, I thought that they might be able to score, but I was worried that the Bengals would have like, I don't know, 40 seconds or something, and then 3 timeouts, and then now all you're asking Burrow is to get into field goal range, and then you have Money Mac on the other side, who is, you know, he's not Justin Tucker, but he's pretty dang good. That's kind of where my head was at. But, you know, then Lamar did Lamar things, and then ended up using all the time, and so we didn't actually need any of it. So that was kind of where my head was at. Like, as soon as we knew that it was a 40-some yarder field goal, like, I knew Justin was going to make it. The only thing I was worried about is just a bad block or something, and then maybe like a tip. But as far as, you know, whether he's going to actually make the kick or not, like, no doubt.
You were happy. You were like, yeah, let's just get this thing over with, run the clock off.
Yeah, I just need to see the win right now. Like, I can't take another loss.
I was also team maybe use a timeout there, because if I recall correctly, it was 3rd down, or it was going into 3rd down. So my thought was, if they have an incompletion or they are unable to convert, we still have the 2-minute warning on our side. This drive's going to get done. And if they did convert, then they would have had like the ability to get, if they got a fresh set of downs, like, I'd been concerned about using more timeouts, and I don't think you would have gotten as much time as you would have with that extra 40 seconds, if that makes all the sense. You know what I mean? Like, I just think I felt like a timeout there could have been all right. But then to answer the original question with, was I surprised we didn't go for more yards? I was slightly surprised. I was like, okay, 43 yards is very much in the realm of makeable, so I wasn't terribly surprised. But I thought that they did not run a play designated to get to the preferred hash. So I thought to myself, there might be one more play just to like line her up. I thought there would be a one play to line us up thing, but Harbaugh made a really good point, like you said, about taking the referees out of the game, and he didn't want to have a chance for a false start or some holding or some baloney call, you know, like illegal formation and getting backed up, you know, like he didn't want anything to go wrong. So it's Justin Tucker. I don't care what hash it's on, 43 yards going in the uprights. So fair enough to that. I want to give credit where credit's due. I thought Stout had a great hold. And I don't just say that. The snap was a little low. You know, if you watch all the snaps that Tucker got that game, or I guess Stout technically got that game, they were all similar except for one, and that was the last one. The last one was a little low, but he was able to negotiate it, get the ball, you know, positioned right, and it was perfect. I can't believe the fact that what was it? If the goalposts were a half yard wide, he still would have made it. Like, how ridiculous is that? It was so right down the middle.
Arena football. Have you ever seen that?
Oh man, that was always fun to watch back in the day. Does that still exist?
I think it does. And as a matter of fact, I think I follow someone on Twitter who actually plays professional arena football. But yeah, they have the goalposts are like, I don't know, 10 yards wide or something like that, if you notice, because the field's so short.
I guess like if it was like skee ball, is that what it's called? Where you have like the bullseye like going in lower and lower, and you're throwing the balls down and trying to get in the holes. I think I feel like it'd be hilarious if the NFL was like that, where there was these little locations where you got extra points, and Tucker would just be like, "I got you. I'll hit any of those, get extra points every time."
Oh man, the Arena Football League filed for bankruptcy in 2019, even before the pandemic. Sad.
Maybe it's been rebranded.
It could be. Yeah, it could be. And we love getting off topic on this podcast. Man, I'm laughing to myself listening to you guys like real time, just like thinking about what the Ravens should do. Should they use a timeout? Should they try to get it on the right hash? Like after the Bengals scored that touchdown, I just like turned off my brain and just like went numb because I was like, all right, I'm someone I don't make too big of a deal about records in the first quarter, first third of the season, and I care more about like how the team looks. But still, I was just like, we can't do this again. It's just too much, especially if it's against Cincinnati. So I was just like, I was fully preparing myself for something else weird to happen, an errant snap, the kick was blocked, and I wasn't thinking at all. I was just watching what was happening and just breathed a sigh of relief when that field goal went through and went to sleep. But
that's funny. Peter's like the patient boyfriend who finally had enough with his girlfriend, the Ravens. Be like, you know what? I'm usually patient, but not this time, man. Come on.
The season would not have been over if the Ravens had lost that game, but man, it would have been frustrating, especially because at this point, after this game, it's going to be a little bit before the Ravens play a game where like we're going to feel really good after a victory, if you know what I mean. Maybe the Bucks, but there's a lot of games against middling to not up to snuff opponents coming up. But hey, they won. We're happy. 3-2 to start the season. Not a bad spot to be. You want to talk about our MVPs for the game, or anything else here on the actual game?
I think it's MVP time.
Let's go.
For me, it's got to be Marcus Peters. The guy was electric. He had that awesome kick. That was a cool photo. And he just he was vibing at a whole other level. And like I said, it was the heart and soul of the defense who played ecstatically. So I'll take the easy one up at the top.
Nice. I'm going to throw mine out to Devin Duvernay. Yeah, just, he was continuing to get more and more involved, and even with Bateman down. And, we didn't talk about it, but he had that great play. It was at the snap that bounced off his arm, and that just took a bounce to be able to pick it up and be able to get some yards. That could have been a huge negative play, and so he saved us again. I feel like Duvernay's got a couple of plays in his career. That one, was it fumble last year?
Against Kansas City, yep.
Against
Fumble
Kansas
recovery.
City, yeah, had one there as well. So kudos
and
to him.
The play that should have been either an incompletion or an interception against Buffalo, just the previous game too.
Yeah,
I don't know if there's anyone who on the field who's just like hustling more than Duvernay. The guy, back in high school, the coaches always talk about the players who like, okay, maybe if you don't have the skills to make it, like if you hustle in tryouts and practice, you'll get some playing time. Not saying that Duvernay doesn't have talent, because he does, but like I feel like that's how he's playing. He's playing like nothing's set in stone for him, which I think is probably the case as someone middling draft pick who has mainly up until this year been a special teams guy. He's stepping up this year so far. I remember after week 1, I was expecting, he had a great game then, and I was saying, okay, I was expecting every week it was going to be someone different. Maybe Prochet would step up as the number 3 receiving option, or Wallace, but it's been Duvernay every week this year. Some games bigger than others, and I think it's time to anoint him. He is wide receiver too. I think it's enough. We've seen enough to say that.
Love Duvernay, and I loved him staying in bounds a couple of times.
Yes.
I can't pick out the game situation, the down or whatever, but it felt like a big game to him. Every game is like that with him, where he wants to get every single yard. There's no easy way out. He wants to make whoever's tackling him pay for it. And that's what you want to see with a guy who gets the ball in his hands 5, 6, 7 times a game, sometimes less. Like, if you're not a workhorse, or you're not a quarterback, something like that, make the defense pay. They're out there 100% of the time, some of those guys, those DBs. Make them tackle you, make them feel it. And you never have to worry about that with Devin Duvernay, just a hard-nosed player. Love it. I guess I'll just take the easy way out. Marcus Peters was great. Duvernay was great. Justin Tucker, I think, not only the 58-yarder, but just the comfort on how the Ravens could attack that whole last drive, knowing that they don't have to get to the 20 to feel comfortable like most teams. They can get to the 30, 35 and count on Justin Tucker. So just like his presence on the sideline changed things, I think, for the Ravens in that last drive. And that's a testament to him. 4 field goals, 19-17 win. Yeah, it was a Justin Tucker kind of night, and a great interview afterwards, all-star interview.
Always the performer, both on kicking the field goals and in his celebrations into the media. Gotta love Tucker, local treasure in Maryland, absolutely. Man, you guys went right in order, the guys I was going to pick, but still I think there's another guy we can shout out to. Alec already mentioned Marcus Peters. Marlon Humphrey, I think, deserves some recognition as well. He may have been the guy who got burnt the worst by Chase in that first matchup against Cincinnati last year, but he came to play. He was a huge reason this week why the Bengals passing attack was not able to get on track. Didn't really make splash plays, but a big part of that was because his coverage was so good. Burrow didn't really attack him terribly much. So Marlon Humphrey had an excellent game as well against Cincinnati.
Fantastic. Well, Jason, thanks for joining us on this monstrous show. That ended up being quite long, but we had a lot of fun, a lot of good topics and conversation about a team that was finally able to assert themselves in the fourth quarter and get a win at home.
Thank you very much for having me. Always a pleasure. And I really appreciate you guys, all the support I get, and happy to come on anytime you want, anytime I can make it happen.
And definitely check out HuddleItUpFilms' awesome, incredible, super stream every Wednesday night starting at 8:30. You'll get, I think, honestly, just some of the best film study you'll see on YouTube, getting it broken down by Brother Jay. It's a beautiful thing. He does a great job with those cut-ups. It's better than ever this year, man. It's not just the circles, but we get your actual opinion on it.
Yeah, it's been fun. And just for anybody that's still listening, it's very player focused. I'm not going to use a bunch of terms, coaches' terms, jargon, stuff like that, and spend all day on 1, 2, or 3 plays. We're going to go through, usually about 10 to 12 plays and just focus on what the player or players we're targeting do well and what they consistently do well. So very easy to digest and very fun. Try to keep it fun.
Nice. Hey, Jason, do you have an idea of who the players you're going to cover this week, or is that going to be announced the next couple days?
No, I haven't. I'm kind of deciding, but I think Pepe Williams is a guy that I really want to take a look at, because we looked at Brandon Stevens last week, and I usually like to grade the games, Chris, and see who makes my notes the most, you know what I mean, before I can, so I have something. But I have a feeling among all the plays that Pepe's made throughout the season, that even if we pull stuff from game one and that kind of thing, we can take a look at how hard-nosed of a player he is, man. Love him.
Definitely looking forward to that. We'll be back later in the week to talk about these Giants, a surprising 4-1 team out of the NFC East, which surprisingly looks good for a year. So it's a very interesting division that we'll get to talk about. You can follow us on Twitter at OneWinningPod, email us onewinningpod@gmail.com, and definitely subscribe to our YouTube channel for more exclusive content. We'll see you later in the week. Go Ravens.